Frisk woke up with a painful migraine. The day after a singing gig was always so terrible. Frisk didn't exactly know why she got these brutal headaches after a night of singing, but they always occurred the next morning without fail. Maybe the headaches were the results of her nights at the clubs when she had to inhale all that cigar smoke. Or maybe the headaches were caused by the loud music and applause from the crowds that always threatened to burst her eardrums. Or maybe it was the fact Frisk physically forced herself to smile the entire time she was on stage. Maybe it was all those things combined. Frisk didn't know why. All she knew was that she had a bad headache right now and she was going to have to deal with it for the rest of the day. And just to make things worse, it was the first of the month. It was the day when Don D's thug would collect her apartment's protection fee. The only problem was Dee's thug, Nick, didn't want to collect money from each person in Frisk's apartment himself. There were over 60 different rooms in total, and that was too much work for one guy to do in a single day. So on the second month after Dee's gang took over the area, Nick ordered the people of the apartment complex to choose one person to collect and deliver the money to him. Of course, it wasn't just her apartment that had that arrangement. The businesses like the small grocery store, the two little eateries, and the local church were also required to pay. And just like her apartment complex, Nick ordered all the owners and the high officials in the church to put somebody in charge of collecting the money and delivering it to him. After meeting that monster who called himself Sans last night, Frisk couldn't bring herself to undress and take a shower. She had tried to. She hated to admit it, but the skeleton successfully terrified her so much that he had practically reduced her back to being 10 years old again. If her parents were still alive and living with her, Frisk probably would have slept with them. Instead, she settled on taking her blankets and pillows out of her room, lied down on the couch in the living room. That's where her brightest lamp was, and fell into a fitful sleep, jerking awake every time her unconscious mind allowed the image of those unblinking red sockets to enter her dreams. Yes, he said he was just joking about following her around for a while, but Frisk wasn't sure when he had been lying or when he had been telling the truth last night. And Frisk had been around plenty of unpleasant and scary people to learn the telltale signs of when somebody was being deceitful. But with Sans, well, it was hard to read a guy's facial expression when his eyes hardly ever blinked and his smile never went away, and with no muscle or skin.
As a man made of bones, I have a real thing for skin.
And yours is just beautiful.
It doesn't matter anyway. Even if he was telling the truth about spending some time here in the city, what are the odds he's going to be anywhere near me?
She took a quick shower, put on a yellow sweater dress, and pulled her hair into a small bun, giving herself a quick look in the mirror before going to every tenant in the complex to take their hard-earned money away from them, just so she could put it in the hands of an old man who didn't even need the money. Frisk knew that the money Don D received from her apartment complex and what he received from those little businesses were more or less pocket change to him. But if somebody didn't pay it... The first month Nick collected Dee's money from everybody was horrible. 3 people couldn't pay the fee. 3 new apartments opened up. Everybody paid every cent after that. Frisk made sure of that. With a sigh and a heavy, deep-seated hatred for Nick, Don D, Sans, and herself, she started collecting from her lovely and poor neighbors. Frisk was at least glad they understood she hated doing this. Everybody else in the apartment complex had been too scared to go to Nick's place of business after he killed those 3 people. It was no wonder why everybody quickly agreed that Frisk could do the task after she had eagerly volunteered herself. Everybody had the money except for a young woman with 3 little children. Pretty and chubby Miss Tin looked panicked and was on the verge of becoming hysterical as she explained to Frisk that one of her kids got sick and she had to spend the money taking him to the hospital. Frisk had nodded, believing her, and made a mental note to herself that somebody couldn't pay. She went to the next floor. Everybody paid except 2 people. The first man was a fat construction worker who only got work every so often. Nicest guy in the world. Frisk chewed her lip when he'd broken down in her tears and begged Frisk to talk to Nick about letting him have a couple more days to pay. Frisk nodded her head, but didn't have the heart to tell him that he'd probably be dead by the end of the day if she did tell Nick that. The next person on that floor who couldn't pay was a disabled woman. Frisk made the same promise to her about talking to Nick.
Okay, 3 people aren't paying.
And on it went for nearly 2 hours of Frisk knocking on doors. People either gave her money and she'd carelessly stuff it in the envelope, or they'd give her excuses. And when her task was done, she tallied up everybody. 7 people couldn't pay, and only 2 could afford to give her half of what the fee was. She was already an hour late, and Nick tended to get angry when people were late. He saw it as a sign of disrespect. That's the reason why the owner of the grocery store had only one hand now. You're more than 2 hours late, you're probably gonna lose something that's attached to your body. Frisk really hated these people. She really needed to leave this town. But she was at the hour mark and she needed to hurry.
I'll clean it up when I get back.
She wasn't gonna do anything when she got back except head to the library. The silence always helped soothe her headaches. She'd saved a lot from all her music gigs, almost enough to leave, and she wanted to leave the city so badly. She had promised her parents she would leave, but things kept happening. She loved the people in her apartment complex too, all of them good, hard-working people who refused to give in to a life of crime.
Honest and hard-working people are so hard to find in this world.
Frisk had promised herself and her parents that she'd leave the city, but she'd also promised herself she'd help as many good people as she could.
Rare people like that need to be saved.
And boy, did these people need help. And until Tardif fell from power, Frisk was stuck in this place, and Tardif was going to get every cent he wanted. Frisk was going to make sure of that. Frisk looked around her messy room. It really was a bad mess to clean up. Probably take her damn near the whole day.
Yep, totally not cleaning this up. I'll do it tomorrow. Probably not.
Don't get it wrong, Frisk knew he was praying for her safe return. But any reminder that she could very well die during one of these deadly money transfers was really not comforting to her. But
if you think it's gonna help me, pray away, you insane God-loving man.
And all the people who couldn't pay were at their windows as well, staring down at her like they were waiting on death row. And Frisk knew they weren't wrong. But death wasn't going to be visiting them today.
You're all gonna be safe today.
None of them waved back, and Frisk knew they wouldn't leave their windows until she came back from her meeting with good or bad news regarding how much life they had left. And the sad thing about it was, none of them could afford to run. Where would they go? And with what money? They could hide, but people who hid were always found. She was almost late, as in she was almost late enough to lose a finger. Frisk ignored her, but she couldn't help but notice the terror that was on the lady's face. She was the one who collected money from the 3 businesses in the church and delivered it to Nick. So whatever spooked her must have happened when she was in her meeting with the prick. Frisk would talk to her about it, but right now her biggest concern was making it to the park where Nick's place of business was located at. She was losing time, and while the park was small, Nick's meeting place was a bit away from the main entrance. She now full-on ran to the park storage shed, praying she made it before she hit the 2-hour mark. Years ago, when she was a child, her friends who were once alive chased after her. But then the gangs and big corrupted businesses started growing. The trees were chopped down, the soil got tainted, and the grass was now an ugly brown color from the endless pollutions and the flowers had wilted and died many years ago. It wasn't even a park for kids to play in anymore. While the playground equipment was still here, most of the pieces were so old and so broken that if kids did play on them, they'd probably need tetanus shots afterwards. Not that any parents in their right minds would allow their kids to enter this place. Most times the park was used for junkies to shoot up in. All those empty needles. Once the big storage shed was used to house gardening tools and plant seeds. Now it had been converted into a bigger building where Nick sold drugs, bought weapons, and collected money. Oh, how the times have changed. She made it with 5 minutes to spare.
Screw you, Nick. I beat you, asshole. I beat you. You're not hurting anybody this time. You're not gonna hurt—
Hey, bitch! Quit leaning on my door and get your ass in here!
No. Why was he mad? Frisk made it. And plus, this was the first time she was almost late. He shouldn't be mad.
Jesus, what a fucking scatterbrain whore. See, I told you choosing this area was a bad choice. All the people living here, they feel so damn entitled. No respect.
Who was he talking to? Sitting at the desk was Nick. He looked completely enraged. And normally this meant somebody was going to get hurt. And Frisk knew who that person was this time. But her fear wasn't for him. Standing on Nick's left side was a tall skeleton. If Frisk had a twin and stood on their shoulders, she still wouldn't be able to reach his height. He must have been over 11 feet tall. Frisk stared at his shoes a little too long. She never saw a man wear a pair of red shoes before. But to her surprise, the giant monster seemed to pull it off. The cracks on the side of his face reminded Frisk of those mobsters she had met at her gigs. Those men were scarred up pretty bad from fights. Did this skeleton receive his marks from fighting? And then, standing by Nick's right side, was Sans the skeleton. And Frisk would have been terrified of seeing him again and would have ran out that door if that he'd been staring at her with that intense red look of his. But he wasn't. And that's why Frisk remained where she stood. Sans was staring at Nick with that empty socket look. And Nick didn't even notice.
Get used to him, whore. They're your new landlords, and you've been keeping us waiting for nearly 2 hours. Now get your ass over here.
As Don D has given my family control of this area, as of today, I will not allow that type of language to be used in my presence.
Frisk froze in her tracks as the taller skeleton spoke. Unlike Sans, his voice was higher pitched and was completely devoid of all humor and lightness. He sounded angry. Just angry and threatening and... Was Frisk really hearing what she thought she was hearing? No. He was in charge.
But seriously, little lady, me and my bros will be spending some time in your city. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other.
No. Why would Don D... Sans, the monster who attacked her last night, was going to be in charge of her area?
I apologize, Papyrus.
Frisk knew Nick was a big racist, but if Don D gave these two control over an area, they were now bosses. And bosses were always treated with respect. And that was the only thing Frisk saw as amusing through her terrified mind. Seeing Nick eat shit.
But with some of these people, that's the only way you can talk to them. You'll learn soon enough how bad these people are. So what's the excuse for being 2 hours late, whore?
Frisk shook the insult off easily, but couldn't shake off his threatening tone. She knew she was going to be hurt today. And if she brought up the fact that she did make his deadline with 5 minutes left, he'd probably kill her. Nobody talked back to Nick either. Frisk and the others learned that lesson on that first terrible month, along with never be late and always pay every cent you owe Don D. Frisk gulped, wondering what hand he was going to chop off before she tried to come up with an excuse.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Nick. I had a gig last night and...
Oversleeping ain't a good reason, you lazy slut!
Let her go. Our area, our our people. We are the only ones who get to show these people the error of their ways as of now.
That's right, human. And if I may grant you some wisdom, you shouldn't be so violent. The little human woman didn't deserve that.
A flutter of hope bloomed in Frisk's chest. Maybe Sans was a brute, but perhaps this papyrus guy might be a lot kinder. Might be a lot more merciful and gentle to the people in her area. The girl could hope, couldn't she?
She apologized and recognized her mistake that she shouldn't keep her superiors waiting. Therefore, if she must be punished, it shouldn't have been so painful. Perhaps a small smack would have been enough to help her remember for next time.
Brutes.
And just like that, the hope in her chest died as quickly as it came. Well, buddy, I think we don't need you anymore.
I'll be on my way then.
Frisk couldn't help but feel a small amount of glee for the man who killed 3 poor people and hacked a man's hand off. Bro, keep her here until I get back.